10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi everyone, welcome to another Criterium race analysis video. Today I'll be looking at how you can save energy riding as a solo rider against teams. So this is another Cycling South Australia Criterium. I'm racing in the C grade again. My buddy Corey had his first race in the D grade today and he actually got third place. So I'm pretty sure I'll be seeing him up in C grade probably before the end of the year. But for today, it's just me, I'm flying solo. So once again, this race takes place in South Australia, and our COVID situation is really about as good as it can be expected. We've got about 8 cases at the moment. They're all from known sources, but thanks to the Victorian situation, which is pretty bad, there's been a massive testing blitz, and the main straight of the racetrack, which you can see just off to the left, has been taken over by a drive-through testing station. So this race nearly didn't happen, but fortunately we were able to negotiate with SA Health and the local council, and we were able to use the short track. So Victoria Park short track's pretty similar to the long track, but this corner down the bottom is just a bit more technical. It's quite a bit sharper. The same as with the long track, you've got a nice descent, or a bit of a downhill, getting up to speed's pretty easy down here, and then you've got a fairly sharp corner. Now, I like the race a bit more technical because it does mean that if you're comfortable going around the corner at speed, you can save a little bit of energy coming out of it. Inevitably, the bunch packs up, comes together a bit, someone at the front touches the brakes, and then the whole bunch concertinas up, and then you've got to sprint out of the corner. So a lot of the time you'll see me coming through that bottom corner way wider than I need, but the upshot of that is I don't need to hit the brakes and I can start pedaling just about as soon as I've hit the apex. So with a sharp technical corner in it, I think this course suits a break a little bit better than the long course, which doesn't have anywhere near as sharp a corner. The top corner just up here is a little bit sharper, but that doesn't really make much of a difference. It's nothing you can't take at full speed. A lot of people will stop pedaling, particularly if you're in the group. If you're on the front, you don't need to. There's also a very slight wind going from east to west, so that's from my right shoulder here, but that's not particularly noticeable. You will notice that I'll be sitting on the left-hand side going down the back straight quite a bit, and I might be overlapping wheels a little. That's because you get a better draft on this side. So let's look at a few things that you can do to keep fresh for the finish. Now, the first thing you need to do is decide how you're going to attack the race, and this comes down to what type of rider you are and how your legs are feeling. Are you the type of rider who can attack again and again until a break goes away, or are you more likely to win from a bunch sprint? Do you want the race to be hard, or do you want it better? So do you work better when it's steady? Riding with a team always puts you at an advantage, but there are some benefits to riding by yourself as well. If there is a break up the road, well, you've got no obligation to chase it down, absolutely zero. You can put yourself wherever suits you best and spend the whole race just working out who's fast and who might be a good wheel to sit on at the end. There's also no expectation that you're going to do any work on the front. You can hide the entire race and no one's going to look at you to pull a turn. I gotta say, this race felt really easy. My normalised power was about 15 watts lower than the last criterium, although last week I did do a turn in a breakaway, so that probably raised it up a little bit. The average speed was actually pretty quick. It was 43.1 this week, which is pretty high for a C-grade crit on this course, particularly where you do have that sharper corner down the bottom. But the first half of the race was really easy. It felt like nobody wanted to do any work at all. Teams-wise, there were really only 2 teams in play today. Norwood in the red and blue kit, just up ahead, and ADX Depot in the bright green tops. Butterfield's development squad had 1 or 2 riders, but they didn't have their full complement out today, and they didn't really feature in making the race hard. And of course, there's also Darren Hicks, who's the one-legged rider, the Paralympian and the former national Para road race champion. He's riding today. And that actually changes the way that you can race this race. Darren is phenomenally strong, and if a breakaway doesn't have him in it, he'll probably wind it back. Oh, and this guy up ahead's Tommy Baxter. He won the Super Series in my category 2 years ago. He's a phenomenal sprinter, and in that series he had a really strong team. He does something really weird at the end. He's leading it out, sits up, has another go, sits up again, and just kind of rolls in. So I'm not quite sure what his goals were today. But anyway, back to Darren. Having Darren in the race means that you can absolutely rely on rule number 1. And rule number 1 is, in C grade, brakes don't stick. Absolutely no one is willing to let a group get up the road. But when Darren's in the race, it's an even better bet because he can single-handedly, almost by himself, bring back an entire big group breakaway. The only time there's a problem is if he's in the break, in which case you need to do some work because he can sustain it by himself. So that's the first little bit of the race, and I'll skip forward to what's going to happen a bit later on. So we've just jumped forward, only a little bit actually. There's been a few attacks going off the front. There's been a lot of work done by some of the guys at the front to chase them down. Coming around this corner, I'm going fairly wide behind Tommy Baxter, but then the group slows down, and I'm using this as an opportunity to move up. Probably worth saying at this point, flying by myself, I'm not interested in going into any breaks today. This is all going to be about trying to make it to the bunch sprint and doing as well as I can in that. I was feeling reasonably good. I had a good warm-up on the rollers, so I thought today was just going to be a bunch sprint and see how I go. I was also pretty confident, given there was almost no wind, that it was going to come down to a sprint. So it slowed right down. I don't want to get on the front. I'm pretty happy just sitting here. We're only 7 or 8 minutes into the race, so just keeping quiet and keeping out of the wind's about where it's at. So here we are, we're at the end of lap 8, and I'm about to make a bit of a mistake here. Remembering that all I'm doing at this point is trying to stay near the front but not on the front. The pace is relatively gentle at this point. I'm in the mid-160s heart rate, but then it starts accelerating, and this guy from uni, I think it's Adelaide Uni Cycling Club, he looks like he's wanting to get in. So I'm thinking I'm going to let him in as the pace is going up, and what I do is I leave too much of a gap. I hesitate too long before calling him through at exactly the same time as an attack's going off the front and the pace is really ramping up. So in that case, what I should have done is just held the wheel or called him through a lot quicker. Quite a few times in this race I do make the same sort of mistake where I decide that I'm going to let someone slot in and they might leave a bit of a bigger gap. In the end, it didn't matter too much. The race slowed down again and I had plenty of time to recover, but those sorts of things can just sap your energy a bit, so you've got to watch out for them a little. So we're at the start of the 11th lap, and I want to talk a little bit about how you can use the slower acceleration to save a few matches. So coming around this corner, quite a lot of the time there was a bit of a punch out as you're going onto the main straight, and this was no exception. Coming around this corner, you can see Tommy Baxter in the Mercedes pants on the right. I'm doing a cozy 350 watts. I'm not really working too hard, but the pace is accelerating massively up ahead, and you can see Tommy is sprinting out of the saddle trying to get on. I'm going to let him in here. I haven't stood up. I only just hit 400 watts, and I know it's going to slow down, so I've lost a few wheels, but I haven't burned a match. And I think that saves energy every time you do that, every time you make that decision. As you can see, I'm barely doing any work and I'm sort of moving up on the outside, which I don't really want to do. So yeah, every time you can save a bit of energy by taking an acceleration slower, losing a few positions, but not burning a match, works out better in the end. So we're coming through here with about 3 laps to go. It's getting towards the pointy end of the race. Not a whole lot's happened over the last couple of laps. I've been keeping out of the wind, haven't done any work on the front that I haven't had to do, and I've been keeping in sort of mid-pack as much as possible. At this point though, I'm starting to think about moving up a little bit. I'm looking at my computer, and I know I've got sort of a couple of minutes until they give us the 2 laps to go, and I'm starting to think about moving up. Coming up the main straight, there's usually a big kick coming out of the corner, and then it sort of fans out across the road, and as you can see, everyone's just soft pedaling or rolling through. That's a good time to move up. We're doing 47 k's an hour, and here goes an attack. Now, we haven't had the 2 laps to go yet. I'm not going to do anything. Darren's just ahead of me. He's hit the front, and he's just going to reel it back. Number 313, he's been really strong in the last couple of races. He often goes on a sort of 2 lap to go attack, so I'm going to be watching for him. Coming through this corner quite nicely, people on all sides, and once again I'm pedalling as quickly as possible but not as hard as possible, so I'm just staying pretty much where I am in the group. Now I moved up on the back straight and made up a few places, and I can afford to slip back those same places so as not to have to kick so hard out of that corner. Here we go, 2 laps to go, and the pace suddenly kicks up a little bit, and at this stage a couple more attacks. I think at this point I was alright, but as the pace rises to chase those down, I'm finding myself slipping back, and I am doing a bit more work than I really want to do. I'm not in the right spot, I'm not directly in the line. I remember the wind's coming over my left shoulder here, so I spend a bit of energy and just try to get back into that line. I don't take this corner particularly well, but I do take it smoothly. I don't lose any speed, bit of a kick to get back on the wheel. And my heart rate's kicked right up. You could see I was doing 600 watts there. Now usually it slows down a bit here, but instead the guy ahead of me is out of the saddle sprinting. And I'm beginning to be a bit worried that if the pace keeps up at this level, I'm not going to have anything left in the sprint. I'm quite conscious of the fact that my 2 to 5 minute power is pretty average, especially compared to my 10 second or 1 minute power. So coming through that corner, I'm pretty much not full gas, but I'm working hard, and then things fan out, people start looking at each other, and we're now coming into 1 lap to go, and all of a sudden the heat's gone out of the race. We're still doing 40 k's an hour, but that's more because of the speed we were doing down the back straight and that kick out of the corner. A couple more attacks, but that little respite was enough for me to feel like I'm getting back, getting some energy back. And we're 4 wide, and so you know when it's 4 wide it's not particularly quick, even if the pace looks pretty high. Now, I really like this spot. I'm not directly behind someone, but I'm well and truly protected on all sides from the wind, so I'm pretty happy here. And I'm going to slow down this bit up ahead because we nearly have a crash. We'll go through it at full speed first. Coming around the corner, the guy on the right sort of gets onto the wheel and then grabs a handful of brakes, and I just managed to make it around without crashing. So let's have a bit of a closer look at that. So coming into this corner, and it's chaos. We're 5, 6 wide. Everyone's kicking, sprinting, and you can see the guy on the far right swerving in. The guy on the green bike slots into the line and then grabs a handful of brakes. Now I probably could have avoided that maybe by looking ahead and seeing that it did slow down. Anyway, on we go. But going on from there, Thomas Baxter, he's got on the front and he's drilling a pretty hard pace. I think this is probably why he sat up at the end. And somehow or other through that I found myself 5th wheel, which is pretty much perfect. Start to get swamped a little bit, and then Darren Hicks pulls through on my left, and this is good. Darren's always up there at the finish, he's incredibly strong, but what I do is I make a mistake here, and I come up on his right, rather than staying exactly on his wheel. So I'll go through this at full speed first, and then we'll slow it down and have a bit of a look. So I'm coming through, I'm on the right, I make the call to go on the left, I'll talk about why in a sec. Stand up and sprint, I'm way too far back, but then Tommy Baxter sits down, stands up, I've got nowhere to go, but then the ADX guy swings over to the right and leaves me a bit of room. So coming through at half speed, sitting behind Darren. Now the reason I've gone on the left is because coming up to this right-hander at the very end, often I get run off into the grass on the right. I decided I wasn't going to be able to take the apex, so the better line was to go on the outside and come around. I did that, but I had to slow down quite a bit in order to get back to the left-hand side. And at that point, there's a few people ahead of me. Tommy Baxter should have won this. He normally has the biggest sprint. Haven't got much of space here. I reckon if I'd had a clearer line, I might have gone a bit harder earlier. But anyway, get across the line in 3rd place, which I'm pretty happy with. and that's me in the bright yellow kit just over the line. So next up we've got the State Road Race Championships, which, given that there's a few NRS riders in my grade, I'm not expecting to finish, but should be a lot of fun. Anyway, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed, we'll see you at the next one. Bye for now.